Yes, it does need more of an alkaline soil. We are currently on something called green sand, which is an alkaline. It's got a high pH, so it's quite alkaline. So it benefits from that. Okay, coppicing. I know my students mentioned it to start with this morning, but just to sort of remind you, is all about cutting trees down. All right. So, as you guys know, in Finland, you have your forestry. You cut your trees down. We do exactly the same in this country. But this management technique is something that's been going on ever since humans started cutting trees down. And really what it is using the tree's natural regeneration, this ability to regrow again. So any tree that is broad-leafed and deciduous, so it drops its leaves in the winter, you can cut down and it will regrow. So we don't have to replant them, unlike conifers, so like your larch or anything like that you have to cut down, you have to replant. These ones will regrow naturally. Okay, so we end up with this regeneration, this coppicing. And it grows very, very quickly. Okay, you've got this big root system underneath and it puts up new growth. So in February of this year, the trees look like that behind you. Okay, that's mature sweet chestnut coppice. That's ready to go, that's ready to harvest. So one of the National Trust contractors came in, cut it down, and this was what's left. So in February, if we put this back, can you see? Yes. There's your cut. Okay, so you can see there's your cut where the tree has been cut down. That is the growth that you've got since February of this year.
Okay.
So we're talking, what are we talking, 8 months of growth, and that's already at this tall. Okay, this is with sweet chestnuts, and all of this wood round here is all sweet chestnut. It's not a native to Britain. Okay, this tree was brought to us by the Romans. When the Romans came over, they brought the sweet chestnut with them because it's such fantastic timber. It's great to work, it's really easy to work, it's got a lovely straight grain, and you can build anything out of it. So it's a really useful timber. The Scotney estate, all of these trees were planted for hop poles. So you all drink beer? Beer?
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely, so do I. Beer, to make beer or to flavour beer, you use a plant called a hop, and it has a small little flower which actually gives you the sort of bitter taste to beer, and it gives it its flavour. Well, to grow it, it's a vine, so it has to grow up, but it can't stand. It needs support. So they used to use hop poles. So these trees were cut down, put in the ground, and the hops would grow up them. All right, very, very traditional.
It's similar to cannabis. It's in the same group of plants as cannabis.
Finnish humala kasvi.
So the hops were very, very important. So obviously the woodlands were very important because you needed poles to be able to grow your hops, if you see what I mean. When they changed and far less hops were being grown in this country, we were shipping them in from elsewhere, then we didn't need so many hop poles, so we didn't need to do so much coppicing. So the woodlands went over. That rotation, that continual cycle, stopped. So we ended up with lots of big coppice trees and none of this young coppice. Now, my students mentioned to you about the different animals and plants and things that benefit. So if you were looking underneath there, you've got different flowers, different animals, different plants compared to here. We're surrounded at the moment by foxgloves. Next year, they will all be up here, great big long pink flowers. Beautiful, right the way through, right the way through. You'll have foxgloves right the way through. But they will only last a few years. Underneath there, if you look under there are no foxgloves. So it's difference. Okay, so we get a difference throughout. And at each stage, okay, so while it's small we get some plants, while it's tall we don't get so many or different ones, and at different stages as it grows up we get different plants. So we get lots of different plants in one very small area. So it's very, very good from that point of view. So from conservation, this is brilliant. Okay, this is fantastic. It really is good. But you can see all the way down through here, you might have to jump because it's quite tall now. You can see just how big an area has been cut out. So you can see that there's been quite a large area cut. And that's called a cant or a coop. Okay, that's a traditional name for it, this sort of area that's been cut. We're going to go and have a look at another area in a minute that was cut the February before. So this was cut this year. The area we're going to look at was cut the year before, and you'll see how much more growth there is and how tall it gets. And also look at the ground and see what different species you see. So it's coppice is brilliant. We love coppice, but it's a very, very traditional method. Okay, it's a very, very old method of managing our woodlands, but it's something that's coming back again. So although it's a very ancient method, it's now coming back. All the timber that's cut from here now, all the timber that's cut from here is stacked up and dried, ready to be chipped and then put into the biomass boiler. So it's no longer used for hop poles. Okay, one or two bits still are, because they still grow hops here at Scotney, and what's important is they still brew their own beer. So they still have a brewery here and they still brew their own beer. So a little bit of the timber is used for hop poles, but most of it goes to the chip boiler, which we'll see a bit later on. Okay. So if we walk back out of here, back up the track and then take the other track down the other side,